In the misty morning, the small hut nestled on the hillside stood quietly, like a world of its own. James sat alone by the fire, its soft glow casting flickering shadows across his tense face, his eyes distant, locked in a maze of unanswered questions. Diep stepped inside, a basket of Duke's vegetables in her hands. She paused for a moment when she saw him sitting there, his usual warmth replaced by an unfamiliar stillness. The air inside the hut grew heavy with silence. James looked up, their eyes met. He didn't smile. "Why didn't you tell me you met with my father?" Diep lowered her gaze, fingers tightening around the handle of the bamboo basket. "I didn't want to put you in a difficult position. I was afraid you'd be caught between me and your family. I thought if I faced it alone, it would pass more quickly." James walked toward her. His voice wasn't angry, but it carried the weight of something deeply personal. "You thought I'd walk away just because my father disapproves? You think I want a wife who simply fits the family image? I love you, Diep, not so you can carry everything alone." She looked up, her voice trembling. "But if I stay, your career, your future, it might suffer. I don't want to be the reason you have to sacrifice so much. I'm just a poor girl who didn't even finish 5th grade, and you're James. You have a bright future ahead of you. I don't want to drag you down." James took her hand firmly in his. "I'd rather be dragged down with you than watch you suffer by yourself. I don't want you living in shame. Don't you understand? You're the one who made me feel truly alive. I've spent my whole life trying to please everyone, but this time, I want to follow my heart." Diep stood silent, tears welling at the corners of her eyes. His words shattered the quiet walls she had built around herself for so long. James held her hand tighter, his eyes unwavering. "I won't let anyone come between us again. I'll speak to my father, I'll tell him everything. And if I have to choose between my family and the woman I love, I won't stay silent. But you, don't walk away from me ever again." In the quiet of that humble hut, with only the wind outside and the soft crackle of firewood, their promise needed no fanfare, no grand gesture, just a look, a firm grip of the hand, and they both knew. This love, they would protect it with everything they had. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting golden rays onto the rows of green vegetables growing along the hillside. Di knelt in the garden, her hands swiftly harvesting bunches of mustard greens that were ready for picking. James sat beside her, holding up 2 fresh bundles, smiling like a child discovering the simple joy of life for the first time. "Look at this," he said. "Every single one is thriving, thanks to your hands." Diep smiled, her eyes glowing with genuine happiness. She looked around the small garden, the space they had built together, where each sprout was not just food, but a reminder of the days they had spent side by side, rebuilding a life from the ground up. After the harvest, they walked back to the small hut. Diep lit the fire and prepared lunch using the vegetables they had just gathered. James rolled up his sleeves without hesitation, helping her sort the greens and slice the roots and stems. There was a calmness on his face that he had never found in the city. Something quiet, something whole. When the meal was ready, they sat together, sharing the modest dishes made from sincerity and care. Around them, the world was still, filled only with the sound of birds and the wind brushing against the bamboo walls. It was the kind of peace that made the chaos of the outside world feel like a distant memory. But as everything settled into quiet, James fell into silence. His father's voice echoed in his mind, harsh and cold, like it had only just been spoken. "If you continue with her, I'll disown you. I won't let someone like her enter this family. Poor, uneducated, a woman with a failed marriage. Do you really think she's worthy?" James tightened his grip on his chopsticks, his eyes darkening. Diep noticed the shift in him and gently placed her hand over his. "You're thinking about your father again, aren't you?" James nodded, his voice low. I can't forget the look in his eyes when he said those words. It wasn't just disapproval, it was pain. Maybe he once lived through poverty and shame himself. Maybe that's why he's so afraid I'll repeat it. Diep remained quiet, realizing for the first time that James's father might be carrying more wounds than anger. "But I'm not afraid, Diep. I'm not afraid of being cut off. I'm only afraid of losing you." She held his hand tighter, her eyes beginning to well. "I won't leave again, and if I must, I'll face it all with you. Outside, the sun still poured over the fields of greens, and the sprouts continued to grow toward the light. And, inside that little hut, with hands entwined, two hearts quietly nurtured a future, one they would defend together, no matter what stood in the way. That afternoon, just as the sun dipped behind the hills, a strange man appeared outside the small hut where Diep had been living. He didn't need to say much. Just a single sentence, firm and cold. "You are required to leave immediately." The words cut through her like a blade. She understood right away. This wasn't just a disapproval from James's father anymore. This was a move, a direct one. Diep stood frozen for a few seconds, then nodded softly. She didn't ask why, didn't argue, because she knew if she resisted, it wouldn't be her who suffered, it would be James. In silence, she packed each of her few belongings, folding up the memories they had created together, one by one. Before leaving, she turned back to the little hut. Her eyes lingered on it for a moment longer, then she whispered to the man beside her, "Please, don't tell James. Just say I need some time. I don't want him to be affected right now." The man gave a brief nod, a flicker of sympathy passing through his gaze, but he said nothing more. When James returned later that evening, the familiar little hut was empty. No laughter from Diep, no warm scent of dinner. The silence hit him like a wall. He ran out into the garden, calling her name, voice rising with desperation, but only the rustling wind and his own footsteps on the dry earth answered back. Inside, he found a small note left neatly on the table. Her handwriting was familiar, though the letters trembled. "I'm sorry, I'm not strong enough to drag you into this fight. I just want you to have the peaceful life you deserve." His hand clenched around the paper. His eyes turned red, voice breaking as he whispered, "You think I want that peaceful life without you?" He stumbled outside, stood in the open hillside and screamed into the empty twilight. "Die! No matter where you run, I'll find you. I promised we'd fight together." Somewhere far away, in a dark, quiet room, Diep sat still, her heart in turmoil. Her mind repeated all the logic. This was the right choice. James had too much to lose. She couldn't be the reason for his pain, but her heart was breaking, piece by piece, because every word he had said, every look he had given her, still echoed so clearly. And in that darkness, she finally understood. Running didn't make love fade. It only carved the pain deeper into her soul. James sat in his office, the light above casting sharp shadows across his face, which had grown cold with anger and disappointment. Beside him was his younger brother, who had witnessed everything in silence, from Diep's sudden departure to James's furious reaction upon discovering that their father was behind it all. His brother looked at him, his eyes steady and resolute. "If you need someone on your side, I'm here. I've met Diep. She's different from anyone I've ever seen. She has dignity, and she truly loves you. You should fight for that." Those words gave James the strength he needed. He stood up, threw on his jacket, and left the office, not as a dutiful son, but as a man ready to defend the life he had chosen. His father sat calmly in the living room, composed as always. When James walked in, he lifted his eyes slowly and asked, "You're here to change my mind again?" James didn't waste time. He sat across from him, locking eyes with the man who had once controlled every aspect of his life. "I'm here to say I won't give up on Diep. She doesn't need to prove anything. The way she lives is already her answer. I love her, and I want to choose who walks beside me." His father furrowed his brow, silent for a few seconds, then responded in a cold tone. "You're blinded. Do you know how many people laughed at me because your mother came from nothing? Do you know how many times I had to swallow my pride, bow my head, endure judgment because of her low status? I don't want you to repeat that." James answered without hesitation. "But I'm not you, and Diep isn't Mum. I don't care what people think, I only care whether she makes me happy." There was a long pause before his father finally spoke again, his voice slower, carrying a reluctant concession. "If she refuses the money, I'll accept her. I'll offer her $20,000. If she truly loves you, like you say, she won't take it. James nodded. Then do it. The next morning, Diep sat in a small cafe across from James's father. A thick envelope of cash lay on the table between them, but her expression didn't waver. She spoke quietly but firmly. I don't need your money. I just need James. If I ever accepted money to walk away from him, I wouldn't deserve his love. That single sentence silenced the man. For the first time, he looked at her with different eyes, no longer clouded by prejudice, but with a quiet, unspoken recognition. After the meeting with James's father, Diep returned to the small house nestled along the mountainside, where she had been staying. She sat down just outside the door, her hands still trembling slightly from the tension. Though she had said everything she needed to say and had refused a large sum of money with a calmness that surprised even herself, her heart remained tangled in a whirlwind of emotions. Fear, exhaustion, and a fragile hope that her words had truly been heard. She stepped out back and watered the small vegetable beds that a kind local had allowed her to care for. Each leafy stem, each row of mustard greens reminded her of the garden where James had once knelt beside her to plant seedlings. She remembered the afternoons he carried water up the hill, sitting beside her while she shared stories from her childhood. The memory tightened her chest. Those moments, those quiet, beautiful pieces of a life they were building, had never faded. On the other side of the hill, James stood silently on the bare patch of land where their old hut once stood, now reduced to scattered traces. He looked into the distance, where the sun was setting behind rows of trees. In his mind, he saw Diep again, laughing by the fire, her hair tousled by the wind, her eyes lighting up as she spoke of her dream to grow clean vegetables and build a life with her own hands. He sat down on the old wooden step, hands over his head. No matter how composed he tried to appear, inside he was hollow. He had searched everywhere, made calls, asked around, but Diep had vanished from his world as if carried away by the wind. And yet there was one thing that kept him from breaking: the belief in her love. The faith in the way she had refused his father, the certainty that if they had weathered so many storms together, they wouldn't fall apart over a few days apart. He lifted his head, tears in his eyes but determination in his gaze. Diep, I know you're out there, watching from somewhere. I will find you. No matter how far you run, no matter how long it takes, I won't stop. Not far away, Diep stood behind a wooden wall, listening to every word James said. She covered her mouth, trying to muffle the sob rising in her chest. Her eyes were red, but her heart was full of pain and warmth all at once. She hadn't expected him to come back to this place, to keep his promise, to say her name with the same sincerity he always had. And as the sun dipped beneath the hills, the two of them, standing on opposite ends of longing, held onto one quiet, powerful belief. The day they would meet again was no longer so far away.
Kiên định. Cuộc sống cô, một người phụ nữ từng bị gò bó trong đau khổ, giờ đây đã có chút ánh sáng nhờ sự xuất hiện của CEO Diệp, người đàn ông giàu có với trái tim ấm áp. Nhưng khi tình yêu thương đã tưởng chừng đã chạm đến trái tim cô, một bóng đen từ quá khứ lại hiện về, kéo theo những nghi ngờ và nỗi sợ hãi. Liệu trái tim Diệp có đủ dũng cảm để đón nhận hạnh phúc, hay cô mãi bị giam cầm trong chính những vết thương lòng không lành? Câu trả lời nằm trong những giờ khắc cảm xúc của tập 13 này. Chúc các bạn nghe truyện vui vẻ. Diệp đứng giữa cánh rừng thưa, nơi những chiếc lá rong xanh mướt rủ xuống như những tấm rèm tự nhiên. Ánh nắng đầu ngày xuyên qua tán cây, chiếu lên khuôn mặt cô những vệt sáng mờ nhạt, làm nổi bật đôi mắt trầm buồn. Hôm nay cô quyết định đi hái lá rong để bán. Một công việc đơn giản nhưng đủ để cô cảm thấy mình còn giá trị trong cuộc sống đầy bất ổn này. Trong lòng cô, một ý nghĩ lặp đi lặp lại như tiếng gió rít qua rừng